Y'all, Wizard101's newest pack is about to be an insane game changer. Right now, we only have spoilers for it, meaning these are files that were data mined, meaning it's not a final product yet. But what you see on your screen is what looks like the earliest iteration, I guess, if you want to call it that, of the upcoming pack. It's the fanciful Fairy Kai Horde pack. I linked the source of this in the description, but basically, you know, the visuals look really cool, but the story is a lot bigger than what it looks like. You might not have noticed by just looking at the graphic. However, all of the gear from this pack is an exact copy, with the exception of item cards, to the raid gear that you can get currently from the Crying Sky raid. Now, if you were to farm the Crying Sky raid right now, as an in live realm without a pack, you would be able to farm for one of two sets of gear. And the gear is honestly very straightforward. You have one set that gives up accuracy and is slightly in the middle when it comes to offense. That set is called the Hun Hao gear. You might have noticed a bunch of people are running Hun Hao robes because it seems to be one of the best robes in the game right now. And the other set is Shabalba gear. Now, instead of giving up accuracy like the Hun Hao set, this gives up pip chance. Now, what's also notable, in my opinion, about the Shabalba set is that it is the highest damage set in Wizard101 right now on some schools, compared to the Reaver set, which is the best set that you can get from doing the Wallaroo final dungeon. Compared to that, there are some pieces of gear in the Shabalba set that give more damage, including the wand. That's a pretty long-winded way of saying is for PvE, some of the best gear in the game right now, you do have to do the raid for. We're talking about the Shabalba set. And if you're trying to PvP, there's also a lot of reasons why you would want the Shabalba set or the Hun Hao set. All of this gear gives shadow rating, which is already a very powerful stat in and of itself, but it does so while retaining relatively high resistant damage. And more recently, they introduced a spell called Dark Surge, which makes having a higher shad chance extremely relevant. What the spell does is, if you have shads, you can trade them in for 2 pips. You do obviously waste a turn doing it, but what you'll notice is if someone has raid gear and they're going against someone without raid gear, it creates a nightmarish situation where they can spam Dark Surge and their shadow enhanced hit. And this has created a scenario in which, where if you do raids versus when you don't do raids, there's a pretty massive difference in your outcome when it comes to PvP. That's led a lot of people into saying that raids are a gigantic barrier of entry for PvP, and therefore they're not going to do it, right? Why would you queue into PvP if you know that just because someone has done raids, they have a big advantage over you? While I do think that argument isn't black and white, I do think it's perfectly valid, right? Like, I think you can get to a certain rank, right? Like veteran or knight without raid gear, not even worrying about it. But once your rank starts looking something like this, like, you know, captain, marshal, warlord, that type of stuff, you will very obviously be at a stat disadvantage going against people with raid gear if you don't, and that will make you lose games, especially if you're both playing fairly optimally. So now it looks like KingsOwl's solution is to add a pack that makes it so that you can basically pay instead of doing raid. Now, even for people that want to just use packs as a way to get gear, this isn't like a perfect fix in the sense that Hun Hao gear is still only from raids. I assume it's gonna stay that way because I don't know why they wouldn't have just made both sets drop in this pack. And right now, there's a lot of reasons why you'd want the Hun Hao gear. The amulets give the highest resist. This might change in the upcoming update. However, this is still a very good template for high resist and a circle jewel on an amulet. The wands, although they're not as high damage as the Shabalba wands, are also the best for any school that requires the use of pip conserve. This is the only wand in the game right now that gives basically every stat other than, I guess, accuracy. This gives crit, pip conserve, pierce, block, and it also gives shads, right? So this is a very good wand. This is obviously also not going to drop from the pack because it's the Hun Hao set. So for people that are concerned that doing raids, you know, is invalid, honestly, I don't really see it. If there's still a template that you would raid for, it just makes it so you raid a little bit less since you don't need both templates necessarily. So while this pack doesn't invalidate doing raids, I do think it symbolizes something kind of powerful here. This is probably a pack that you can buy to cancel out the most amount of effort in the game right now. Whenever we have conversations about whether something is pay to win, very often you'll notice that the trajectory for Wiz isn't that things are becoming more pay to win, but things are definitely becoming more and more like pay to speed things up, right? You could farm all of the spellaments in the world, but you could also open up pack. By opening this pack several times, I could basically, you know, discount all of the time I would spend farming for spellaments on this wizard, especially if I want rank 1 through 6 spellaments. You could wait out your pet timers naturally, or you could buy potions so that basically you speed it up and you can make your pet a lot faster. You could even farm for gold, or if you really want to, you can just buy your gold, right? There are countless examples of how Wiz has become a thing where, yeah, I mean, if you really want to like not spend crowns, you actually have the ability not to, and it won't really affect your gameplay. But you could also pay to advance. Now, does this follow that? Yes, this new pack follows that exactly, but I do think now we're getting to the point where packs just cancel out tons of effort, and I kind of hate that that's become the expectation. If you don't have as many people on your friends list that are down to raid, it's not really that you have the option to raid, and if you want a PvP and it feels like you need the raid gear now, it feels like you're being pushed into buying this pack. The net outcome of this pack, I think more people are gonna PvP. That's probably a good thing. But I do think Wiz in general, I think they need to focus more energy, not on just making sure that raid gear can be accessible through packs, so you have an excuse to make raids insanely difficult and inaccessible. But I think they should make raids maybe a little less difficult, a little more accessible. I've seen a lot of people talking about this pack, and it's so weird to me that people are celebrating a way to pay for gear that they just cannot get. Like, I don't think that's, like, great, let's celebrate it, but I don't think we should be at that point to begin with. As a side note, I also think they need to start looking into what makes raid gear really, really good when it is good, so that people that don't run raids don't feel fully left out of PvP. I think the huge, you know, rise in the need for raid gear is from the fact that it all gives shad rating, and they added the spell. I think the spell, there's a good argument at least for maybe it's very, very OP. Maybe it needs copy limits that isn't 4, because it's kind of ridiculous to see this 4 times before someone even reshuffles if they have way higher shads than you, right? I feel like they, not only should they try to like look into how to get more people comfortable with raiding, maybe get more people having access to raids, they should also look into why certain sets are so OP and what they're connected to. I actually really think they've started to do a much better job with balancing out stats, balancing out spells. I think I actually had a lot of fun doing test run PvP. We'll see, maybe something's ridiculously broken, but a meta being good, or even spells getting better and better in terms of balancing, none of that's gonna matter if the vast majority of gear is basically either a super time intensive side activity with 11 other people or opening up a bunch of packs, right? No one's gonna like look at that situation and feel good about it. That's just my 2 cents on this. However, if you didn't know that the Shabalba set is gonna be in a pack, probably, this is, you know, good to know. Let me know what you guys think of them adding raid gear to the pack. I definitely think it's actually genuinely, there are some positives and some negatives. I look forward to reading all of y'all's comments. Drop a like if you enjoyed, leave a sub if you're new, and as always, if somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong. Stay awesome, see y'all soon, and yeah.